Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something real simple. Do you want to live a life by design or a life by default? Because every day you wake up with two choices. You can either move towards your purpose or stay parked in your excuses. Now let me tell you the truth. God didn't put you on this earth to merely survive. He put you here to thrive. But to thrive, you need fuel. You need motion. You need motivation. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how to motivate yourself by leveraging dopamine, your brain's natural reward chemical, and crush your excuses like the lies they are. Let's get into it. Motivation is one of the most misunderstood forces in our lives. Most people treat it like some kind of magical feeling, something you wait for, something that strikes you like lightning. But that's a trap. Motivation isn't a feeling. It's not some mysterious burst of inspiration that shows up when the stars align. Motivation is a result, a reward that comes after action, not before it. And when you truly understand this, you unlock the ability to move forward no matter how you feel. So many people sit still because they think they need to feel ready first. They tell themselves, once I feel motivated, then I'll start working out. Once I'm inspired, I'll write the book. Once the mood hits, I'll launch the business. But guess what? That moment almost never comes. And even when it does, it's temporary. You cannot build a meaningful life based on a temporary emotion. You have to learn how to act without asking your feelings for permission. But there's something powerful about taking the first step, even when it feels hard, even when it feels small. That's where true motivation is born. Not in your mind, not in your mood, but in your movement. You move, and then motivation follows. You don't wait to feel confident before you speak on stage. You speak, and the confidence grows. You don't wait to feel strong before going to the gym. You go, and strength starts to build. Motivation is momentum. You start with an inch, and soon you're running miles. Let me give you a quick personal example. There was a young man who always dreamed of being a speaker, but every time he thought about sharing his voice, fear gripped him. He'd say, I'll wait until I feel confident. Weeks passed, then months, then years. One day, a mentor told him, stop waiting to feel like a speaker, just speak, even if it's just to your mirror. So he did. He stood in front of a mirror, heart racing, palms sweating, and spoke. Touch for 5 minutes. The next day, he did it again and again. Soon, he was speaking to small groups, then larger ones. Today, he speaks to thousands, not because he waited for motivation, but because he moved in spite of fear. That's what you must do. Stop bowing to your emotions. You are not your mood. You are your mission. And when your mission is bigger than your feelings, your movement becomes consistent. That's where power lives. That's where purpose is found. That's how warriors are built. You don't need motivation to start. You need conviction. Because once you take the first step, your soul will remember who you really are. So go, start, take one tiny action, not because you feel like it, but because you're called to. And that, my friend, is when the fire of true motivation will begin to burn. Dopamine is often called the brain's feel-good chemical. And for good reason. It's the spark that ignites our desire to chase rewards, to seek pleasure, and to feel alive. But here's the catch. Dopamine can either be your greatest ally or your sneakiest enemy. It all depends on what you decide to feed it. Most people don't realize that their dopamine system is constantly being hijacked by instant gratification, like scrolling endlessly through social media, binge watching shows, or indulging in unhealthy food. These quick hits flood the brain with dopamine, giving a brief feeling of satisfaction, but in the long run, they leave you depleted, distracted, and stuck in a cycle of chasing empty pleasures. You might feel like you're unmotivated or lazy, but really your brain is addicted to cheap, shallow dopamine hits instead of the deep, lasting satisfaction that comes from meaningful progress. The truth is, dopamine is not the enemy. It's a powerful force meant to motivate you toward growth, achievement, and success. The problem is when it's wired to reward temporary pleasure instead of sustained discipline. The key is to retrain your brain to crave the kind of dopamine that comes from accomplishing goals, overcoming challenges, and pushing yourself beyond comfort. This rewiring doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with small wins and intentional celebration. Every time you complete a task, even something as simple as making your bed or sending that important email, your brain releases dopamine as a reward. If you recognize and celebrate these moments, you train your brain to associate satisfaction with productivity, not procrastination. Imagine a young woman who struggled with procrastination for years. She felt overwhelmed and trapped by her own excuses. One day, she decided to experiment with this idea. Instead of waiting to feel motivated to start her work, she committed to working just 5 minutes each day. After those 5 minutes, she would pause, smile, and say, "I'm proud of myself." That small celebration released a burst of dopamine and created a powerful feedback loop. Over time, those tiny celebrations built momentum, and her brain began to crave the satisfaction that came from progress, not from scrolling or distractions. Slowly but surely, her procrastination melted away, replaced by a growing desire to achieve and create. Her life transformed because she learned to use dopamine as a weapon for motivation, not a weakness for distraction. This same principle applies to you. Your brain is wired to seek pleasure, but you have the power to decide what kind of pleasure you want to feed it. Will you continue to chase fleeting moments of distraction, or will you train your mind to find joy in discipline, in growth, and in the pursuit of your dreams? The choice is yours. When you learn to harness dopamine correctly, motivation becomes less about waiting for a feeling and more about creating a lifestyle where every step forward is rewarded and celebrated. That's how you break free from the cycle of excuses and step into unstoppable momentum. Remember, it's not about being perfect every day, but about leaning into progress and rewarding yourself for showing up. Your brain will thank you, and your life will reflect it. Excuses are some of the most convincing voices we hear in our minds, whispering reasons why we can't, why we shouldn't, why it's too hard or too late. But here's the hard truth. Excuses are just lies dressed in comfortable clothes. They sound real because they protect us from discomfort, fear, and the unknown. When you hear that little voice saying, "I'm too tired, I don't have enough time," or "I'm not ready yet," what it's really doing is trying to keep you safe inside your comfort zone. It's trying to keep you stuck where nothing can hurt, where failure doesn't exist. But in reality, those excuses are nothing but chains holding you back from becoming who you were created to be. The problem isn't the excuses themselves. It's that you give them power by believing them. You start to think, maybe I really am too tired to start my business, or maybe I don't have enough skills to chase my dreams. That's when excuses stop being just words and become barriers. But here's the key. Your purpose, that burning reason why you want to succeed, has to be stronger than any excuse you make. Your why must drown out the whispers of fear. When your purpose is clear and powerful, excuses don't stand a chance. They lose their grip because you're no longer willing to accept them as truth. Think about a man I once heard about. He was a single father working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Every day he came home exhausted with every reason in the world to say, "I can't." But inside, he had a dream of giving his children a better life, a life filled with opportunities he never had. One night, after a long day, he was so tired he wanted to give up. But then he looked at a picture of his kids and said, "No more excuses. I have to keep going for them." That simple shift changed everything. The excuses still tried to sneak in, but his purpose was louder. He found ways to learn, to grow, to push beyond fatigue and doubt. Today, he runs a successful business and his children are thriving. His story isn't about having fewer excuses. It's about having a stronger reason. This example shows us that excuses are not enemies to battle with brute force. They are signals that tell us where our faith and focus need to grow. When you face your excuses head on, you're not just dismissing them. You're replacing them with truth. Truth like, "I may be tired, but my purpose is greater. I may not know everything, but I'm willing to learn." When you replace excuses with conviction, you rewrite your story from one of limitation to one of limitless potential. Excuses feel comfortable because they are familiar, but they never lead you to where you want to go. They are the dead-end roads disguised as detours. So don't be fooled by them. When the excuse comes knocking, answer with your vision and your purpose. Let your why be the hammer that breaks the chains of your comfort zone. When your reason for moving forward is stronger than your reason to stay stuck, you become unstoppable. That's when you stop living a life of what ifs and start living the life you were born to live. Momentum is the secret weapon in the battle against procrastination and lack of motivation. When you think about motivation, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the big goals, the massive projects, or the monumental changes you want to make. The truth is, trying to leap straight into the deep end often paralyzes us. But real motivation doesn't start with giant steps. It begins with tiny, almost invisible actions that build up over time. These micro wins are the building blocks of unstoppable momentum. When you start small, the resistance drops and your brain begins to crave progress rather than perfection. This is where motivation takes root. Not from waiting for inspiration, but from creating it, one small victory at a time. But the beauty of micro wins is that they make the mountain climb feel possible. Instead of focusing on how far you have to go, you focus on the next step right in front of you. These small wins trigger your brain to release dopamine, the feel-good chemical that rewards you for progress. This biochemical reward system reinforces your efforts and pulls you forward. Every time you complete a tiny task, your brain says, yes, keep going. And before you know it, those small wins stack up like bricks, forming a solid foundation of motivation and confidence. What once felt impossible now feels manageable and even exciting. Let me tell you about a woman who transformed her life through this very principle. She had dreams of becoming a writer, but was overwhelmed by the idea of finishing a whole book. The mountain seemed too steep, the journey too long. Instead of giving up, she committed to writing just one paragraph a day. One small paragraph. Some days that was all she could do, but she celebrated every paragraph as a win. Over weeks, those paragraphs grew into pages, pages grew into chapters, and chapters became a completed manuscript. She didn't wait to feel motivated. She created motivation by showing up consistently, one tiny step at a time. That manuscript changed her life, but it started with just 5 minutes and one paragraph. This example teaches us that motivation doesn't have to be a grand event. It's a series of small, intentional choices that build momentum. When you lower the activation energy, the initial resistance to starting, you make it easier to begin. Whether it's cleaning one corner of your room, sending a single email, or doing one push-up, these tiny actions break through inertia and create a chain reaction. Momentum feeds itself, and soon you find yourself moving faster and farther than you imagined possible. You don't have to be perfect or do everything at once. You just need to start, even if it's just a little. The key is consistency, not intensity. Each micro win is a victory that fuels your motivation machine. Over time, these small victories accumulate into big results. When you understand this, motivation becomes less about waiting for the perfect moment and more about creating your own. You become the driver of your destiny, using momentum as your fuel. So start small, celebrate every win, and watch how your life transforms. Momentum is the magic you've been waiting for. It's right in your hands. Let me close with this, and I want you to write it on your heart. You are not unmotivated. You're undirected. Motivation isn't a mystery, it's a mechanism. Leverage your dopamine, destroy your excuses. And remember, God gave you the power to create, not just to consume, not just to wish, but to walk boldly into the life you were called to build. So today, not tomorrow, decide to become dangerous to your doubts. Step up, lock in, and live full so you never die empty.